Hello, and welcome to Senior Code Review Buddy. My name is Chris, and today I'm going to talk about code reviews and what I think they shouldn't be used for. I previously talked about where I think code reviews provide value, so if you want to see that side of the code review discussion, please check out that video in the description below. As I've previously mentioned, I think code reviews are great. I think they can provide a lot of value and can be really helpful, but I don't think all of the things people use code reviews for are great. The four main things I've seen and don't agree with are just checking the code review box, knowing who to blame if a bug enters the code base, ensuring that code is written exactly how the reviewer would write it, code kingdoms, and architecture discussions. Let's dive into each of these in more detail. These are easy to spot. Code reviews where the reviewer just says rubber stamp LGTM, or they review a 500-line change in a minute, or any other case where they clearly didn't look at the code. This isn't providing value for anyone. We aren't getting any of the advantages of a code review, but we're still adding some of the code review overhead. Someone still had to interrupt their workflow and hit a button for no reason other than hitting a button. We're saying that this change was reviewed, but it wasn't. We shouldn't be generating incorrect data like this. Please don't do this. But if you really think that code reviews are adding no value to your workflow, then work to get them removed as a requirement to your repo. I personally think that's a bad idea, but I think it's better to be transparent and admit that a change wasn't reviewed than to pretend it was reviewed. This one is easy. If a bug enters production, we shouldn't be using code reviews to determine who to blame. If I know I'll get the blame if a bug enters from code I reviewed, I'll probably take one of two stances. I'll avoid reviewing code as much as possible, or I'll be super thorough with my code reviews, which will make me be so slow that people will try to avoid sending code reviews to me. Or I'll do both, and I think these are both bad outcomes. Code reviews should be used to reduce the amount of bad code that enters the system, but bad code is going to enter at some rate. There is always going to be something that sneaks in, some interaction that wasn't considered, some requirement that changes somewhere. We can introduce processes to change the frequency or impact of such bugs, but they will happen. What's much more important than figuring out who to blame when a bug is found is to figure out how to prevent that from happening again. Are there certain types of tests missing? Is there certain support tooling like a linter that could be run that isn't? Are there warnings that are getting silenced that we should fix? Is there training we could offer the junior developers on the team? When addressing a bug, try and figure out how to fix that issue and how to reduce the chances of similar issues like this happening again. One thing that I think people need to be careful about with code reviews is accidentally creating code kingdoms. Basically areas where only certain people can land code, and if anyone else tries, they'll have their code rejected or only be allowed under very strict conditions. These conditions usually mean the code can only be landed if it's written exactly how the reviewer would have written it. No variation in any approach, names, or anything else. It's not helpful if certain areas of a code base can only be worked on by a certain group of people. Everyone within an organization should be able to pitch in and help work on different areas. Now, this isn't to say that I don't think code owners have a place in the code review process. They very much do. But their place shouldn't be to decide exactly how each change is made. What a code owner should be doing in the code review process is ensuring the code authors are aware of any context in that space that could impact their change and is taken into account. A change that looks fine to an outsider could trigger issues that only people who've closely worked with the code are aware of, and that's where code owners add value. And sometimes this should cause code owners to reject code, but it should be based on, for reason X, this doesn't make sense, or this will cause a crash here, not this isn't the way I would have done it. One argument I've heard is that these kingdoms are good for enforcing common coding standards to a particular part of the code base. I'd argue that coding standards shouldn't be specific to part of the code base. They should be common to an organization. This shouldn't be something that the code owners are thinking about. This is something every reviewer should be thinking. Architectural discussions are extremely important when working on projects. A project is unlikely to be successful if it's only built out one change at a time, without having a solid plan of how the later pieces will work together. And that's why code reviews generally aren't the right time for an architecture discussion. They aren't the right scope. They are one change at a time. An architectural discussion is probably going to cover a lot of thoughts and ideas, and I've never seen a code review system that is well suited to those types of discussions. Another problem with trying to have an architectural discussion during code review is the code has already been written. If you have the discussion and decide to do something different, it probably wasn't the best use of the code author's time to write that initial change. But you also don't want people saying, we'll use this approach since that code is already written. That will lead to other problems down the line and is a bad habit. When having an architectural discussion, you're going to want to consider the pros and cons of various approaches and probably put it down somewhere that's easy to reference in the future. At a high level, I personally suggest having the discussion in a format. It's easy to get feedback from your peers in a document, easy to make sweeping changes when you're just changing a paragraph describing how you do something instead of having to change all of the code, and easy to look at the document later. Those are the main ways I've seen or heard of code review processes being used in ways that I don't personally agree with. Are there any things you've seen code reviews used for that you disagree with? If so, let me know below in the comments. If you have any other comments, code you'd like me to review, or ideas you'd like me to talk about, please leave a comment below or reach me at chris@seniorcodereviewbuddy.com. Thanks, and have a great day.